What exactly is that job? It is the job that anything off the field is what I deal with. So if your mind is wandering as to what that is, yes, I have probably dealt with that or taken care of it at some point in time. But it's great for me because I get to see boys on the front end, and then I get to see boys that shave on the back end. And so for me and my heart to really impart as much as I've learned and what God has shown me to dads, it's kind of the perfect scenario because I get to see what the beginning is in all different stages, and I get to see them coming to that next season of life, college, and I get to see what I'm dealing with and where we missed it on the front end. And so I would be remiss if I didn't show you my crew. This is my crew. My wife, Carrie, and I have been married almost 20 years. We have 3 kids. We don't really know life without kids. Preston was born 18 months after we got married. We were 25 and 22 when Carrie had Preston. We're lucky he's still alive. Let's just be honest. We had absolutely no clue what we were doing. Bennett is 13 and in 7th grade. Emma Sanders is 9 and in 3rd grade. So that's our crew. And before we really get into kind of these 5 essentials and what takeaways and what I've learned, I need to tell you kind of my story. Because in order for you to understand where we're headed, you have to understand my story. As I said before, we really don't know life without kids. And from a spiritual perspective, at 25 and 22, we were just young and stupid. At least I was young and stupid. Carrie was just young. And so we didn't know what to do. And at that point in time, God, about 6 years into Preston's life, God brought a man into my life that many of you know, who is the guy that's probably been the single greatest spiritual influence in my life. His name is David Montague. He went to MUS. He now runs Memphis Teacher Residency. David sat me down one day and kind of called me out and said, you know what? Christ is just kind of part of your life. He's not all of your life. And you need to move to that place where the gospel of Jesus Christ and who he is and what he's done is everything. It drives everything you do. And so I began to start thinking personally, what does that look like? And so I started making lists and drawing diagrams. And I thought, what does it look like for the gospel to drive how I'm about to raise Preston, who is our oldest? And so I thought the best thing to do is go ask all of the guys that I respect and who I care about and who I think are really, really wise in that area, what they do. So I just started calling guys up and meeting with them and asking questions. What do you do? What's your plan? I got basically nothing other than devotionals at dinner and maybe a conversation here and there. I got nothing. And it freaked me out. Like the guys that I respect the most and I thought were doing it the right way had no plan. And about that time, I started working here and started asking dads here. And nobody's fault. There was no strategic plan, intentional plan on how to raise their sons or daughters. And I thought to myself, this cannot happen. This has got to change. And I ran across an idea. And it really stems from this thought. If boys don't learn, men won't know. If girls don't learn, women won't know. If children don't learn, adults won't know. And that's where we are. We have a generation of young men and young women, especially young men, who have no direction, who have no clear definition of what it means to be a man or what and how that fleshes out on a daily basis. And guess whose fault that is? It is ours. The scariest verse to me in all of Scripture, and there's a lot of things that convict me of my own sinfulness, but if you go to Judges chapter 2, verse 10, there is a description of the next generation of Israelites. Joshua dies, and this next generation of kids is described this way. There arose a generation who neither knew the Lord or what he had done in Israel. Well, the only way that information was passed down in that culture was verbally. And family was so strong at that point that it was on the parents. And that verse scared me to death. And it was as if God said, do not let this happen with the next generation, especially your own children. And so I just kind of went on this journey to think about, what is Deuteronomy 6, verses 4 through 9, what does it tell us? Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and might. Then what does it immediately do? It doesn't say, go tell your friends. It says, go tell your children and teach it to them diligently. It's work. And so all of these things come together to me all at once. And it's really kind of been my life's mission. What God has called me to do is to try to figure out how I can convey that to a generation of dads so that they will be strategic and intentional with their children. And that Judges chapter 2, verse 10 doesn't happen with our kids. That they know every single day who God is and what He's done. And so for me, I started making a list. I'm a list guy. I started writing down every single thing that I wanted Preston to know before he was 18 and leaves us for college. Guess what? He's 18 and he's leaving June 1st to go play football right down the street. So he's out of my hands. And if you hear somebody say it goes by quick, I know we got a lot of dads in the room that have some boys that are older than Preston. It goes by quick. I mean, I can still remember the scene from Alien pulling Preston out of Carrie's stomach. Like, I remember it vividly. And now I can't even pick a fight with him because he would take me down so quickly. It's gone. Those times are gone. I've got basically 3.5 months left. And it's a scary thing. So when you hear that, understand that I just started making a list of everything I wanted. And then I thought to myself, how can I rally my family to this? So I got the help of a graphic designer, and this is what hangs over our, you can't really see it very well, it's not a very big image. This is what hangs over our fireplace at our house. I call it the Brady family crest. What I learned is use a common language and use it over and over and over again, especially with boys, because they don't learn the first time or the second time or the 72nd time. You have to continually remind them. And so I came up with the Brady family motto, take initiative for the benefit of others. We're going to take initiative for the benefit of everybody in our family and for others because that's what Christ did for us. And everything that revolves around anything in the Brady house revolves around that quote. If somebody doesn't make their bed, it's not go make your bed. It's why are you not taking initiative for the benefit of your mother who has made your bed over and over and over again? You see, you get a common language and a common theme, and everybody starts to rally around it. Trust me when I say, everybody in this room is smarter than me. And if I can try to struggle and figure this out, I know you can as well. My heart is to motivate you to be strategic and intentional with your kids. And so that's where we landed. We have the truth and security of the gospel as the foundation of the house. We have the knowledge and discipline, the plumbing. You know what plumbing does? Hopefully brings the good in and takes the bad out, hopefully. We wanted warmth and tradition. There are certain things that we do in the Brady household that are fun and stupid, but we wanted to have those kinds of things that we do. And then we just wanted to create a new normal as parents. We wanted to be so strategic and intentional, and we screw it up every single day, but we wanted to go in that direction. Carrie and I's heart was to just pour as much as we can into them so that we are raising up future husbands, future fathers, future mothers, future grandmothers, even if you want to take it that far. That's what we're doing. And so what I want to do with you today is share these 5 things that I think are essential to you as a strategic dad. Now, the beauty of these 5 principles is that it allows you to work with your personality, and it allows you to work in the freedom of, you could find something better to do than I do. I'm going to share with you kind of what I've learned from some dads and what we do here at PDS and also what we do as a family. and what I've learned from college athletes, which is probably not the best example, but you need to hear those things. But I want to give you these principles and then let you take off and run with them. But I promise you that if we're all running in the same direction and all trying to do this together, this next generation will change. This city will change. I believe with all my heart if we could get this information out that our country would change. If we could rally groups of dads to be strategic and intentional with their boys. So let's get started. First is this. As dads, we are called to cast vision. So what does that mean? That means we have to parent with the end in mind. We have become a reactive society instead of a proactive society. What do I mean by that? I get phone calls almost every day. I got one this morning dealing with a dad with social media. What do I do with this? Right? And those things are going to come up. But what we have to do as fathers is we've got to get ahead of the game. We've got to know what's coming before it comes so that we can give them the proper way to navigate and handle things. That requires work on your part. But we have to think with the end in mind. My numbers, my kids' ages are 0, 5, and 9. That's how when somebody asks me, 0, 5, and 9 are my 3 numbers. You know what those numbers are? How old or how many years until they turn 18 and leave our house. It's a totally backwards way of thinking, but you have to think that way. It might be putting marbles in a jar and taking one out every day to give you a visual of that. I don't know what it looks like. There's an app. There is an actual app that will count down 7,000 days is really what you've got, and it will count down every single day and let you know how many you've got with each of your children. But we have to think with the end in mind. You guys are the most successful men that I know. You plan out everything. Why would you not have a strategic and intentional plan for the gifts that God has given you? You plan out everything else. If your iCal is anything like mine, it's down to the very minute. Why would we not want to be strategic and intentional with the very gifts that God has given us? I promise you, if you don't have a plan, you won't have a plan for the rest of his years, whether it's 5 years left, 1 year left, 10 years left, 12 years left, whatever the age of your children. If you don't do it, you won't be held accountable to it. I pull up mine on my computer about every couple of weeks just to remind me of what that looks like. And if you would like my list, if you'll send me an email, I'm happy to send you what I wrote down. I've got 2 separate lists. I've got kind of a spiritual list of what I want them to know, and then I've got a life skill list of what I want them to know. I'm happy to send those to you. I don't think it's perfect by any means. It's just something for me to hold myself accountable to my own kids. But you've got to have that. The second thing I think you have to have is you need to have a clear definition of what it means to be a man, and your son needs to know that. If you don't have a clear definition of what it means to be a man, then how is he going to know? What are you going to judge it by? There has to be some kind of standard. There has to be some kind of line that you draw that says, this is the goal. Now let's have conversations accordingly based on that. Our definition at PDS is a real man glorifies God by seeking an adventuresome life of purpose and passion as he protects and serves others. Every 6th grade boy, when he leaves here, knows that. He's been taught it for years. If you walk into 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade chapel at PDS, I can have a 1st grade boy stand up in front of all 200 of his peers, and he will quote the manhood definition for you, easily. I mean, just right off the bat. We say it every single day at chapel. Every day at chapel we say it. Do they know it? Yes. Do they get it? No. They're still going to walk and slap somebody in the back of the head walking back from chapel. It happens. Welcome to the land of boys. That's just reality. But it's my job to remind him of that. And more importantly, it's my job to model that. If I don't have a definition, then what am I seeking to model? So you've got to have that. You have to have that. And for dads, you need to make sure you have a definition of godly womanhood. Between you and your wife, you need to make sure that that's clear. And that needs to be communicated as well. Very, very important. Because then you can now say, okay, a real man glorifies God. All right, well, let's boil it down for a 7-year-old boy. What does that mean? That means, all right, let's think through how do we glorify God when we're sitting at the dinner table? How do we glorify God when we're playing soccer? How do we glorify God when we're with our friends? It's really not rocket science, fellas, I promise you. If you just start to think that way, life will change. Life at its core is pretty simple. We're seeking to glorify God in all we say and all we do. And so just put yourself and your son or daughter in those situations and ask that question. It's critical. But the most important thing you can do is be proactive. Try to think about situations, right? You don't ever want your son to be put in a situation where somebody hands him alcohol in high school and he doesn't know how to have an answer for that, right? You don't want him to be alone with a girl and not have been instructed beforehand what that's, well, one, he shouldn't be by himself, right? But if that were to occur, he's got to be able to figure out how to navigate that. He's got to be able to properly navigate high school athletics or high school parties, high school dating, all of those things. That means you've got to get ahead of the game. And let me tell you one area you really need to be ahead of the game. Social media. That was the question that I got this morning. It was a bullying situation on social media. You're going to have to know more than they do. And guess what? That's very difficult. Very, very difficult. But that means you got to read. You got to do your homework. You got to ask questions. And you have to have a room full of dads that can journey with you so that I can ask, hey, Howard, what'd you do with this situation? Yeah, this is what I did. I don't know if it worked or not, but this is what we did. Then you go ask another dad, hey, Carter, what'd you do with this? And then we can navigate those together. That's why these are so important. So we've got to cast vision. Next is this. Communicate truth. The single greatest thing you can do for boys is communicate early and often with them. If I were to boil this entire talk down to one thing that I think we have done well with our oldest son, is communicate. The best thing that we ever did when he was young was we set a rule. No one-word answers. One-word answers were not allowed. Now, what does that have to do for me? That means I can't come home and go, how was your day? Because how was your day is going to get good, bad, fine. One of those three, more than likely. But if I start with what was the best part of your day or what was the worst part of your day and why, I get a conversation. And let me tell you what that's turned into. We started that early, probably 8 years old, 9 years old. Guess what that has gotten into? That has gotten into an 18-year-old boy who will talk himself into trouble. He will flop down on our bed, nearly break it because he weighs 210 pounds. He will flop down in our king-size bed in between us and talk about what went on at the party or what happened with this girl or who made this decision or why he made this decision. And you know what we have had to learn? This is the gold. When they tell you something, don't freak out. Because the minute you freak out is the minute he shuts down. Period. Now here's what happens in the Brady house. He comes home. We start talking. He did something stupid. I freak out. I freak out. I instantly want to fix it and call him an idiot. And at the end of the day, Preston, so some of you know Preston, he's a really, really good kid at the end of the day. I mean, he just is. He makes really, really good decisions, but he's also an idiot. So I freak out, and I storm off. Mistake number one, right? So he shuts off. Well, then in comes Superwoman. Carrie comes in, starts talking to him. They go up to his room or go start watching TV, and he shares every single thing. Now, she comes in back into our room and freaks out with me. She just hides it better than I do. But here's what happens. He just keeps talking. And it's all because he knows that he can share those things without being fearful that we're going to just completely flip out. Are there consequences to bad decisions? Absolutely. But you completely miss the boat if you're not willing or able to talk through those with him. That's where you miss the boat. Right? I deal with these college football players all the time. Some of you are were college athletes. Not are college athletes, were college athletes. Right? So their world is, you need to be at workouts at 6 a.m. If you're there at, well, in our world, if you're not there at 5:45. But if you're there at 6:01, I mean, forbid that you were there at 6:01 in our culture. He doesn't care why you're there at 6:01. There's not a conversation to be had why you weren't there at 6:01. He runs till he pukes. But guess who's there to have that conversation of why he wasn't there at 6:01? That's why I have a job. And I'll always have a job because they're all idiots. And they're all going to be late. And they're all going to mess up. But they know that they can come talk to me because they know I don't have playing time to hold over their head. I don't have a scholarship to hold over their head. I'm just there to listen. It's the exact same situation with us as parents. You have to be willing to talk through those things. The second thing under communicating truth is this. For us, I think what we've missed the boat is we have to, as dads, teach our boys and our girls how to apply biblical truth to everyday life. It's critical that we do that. The biggest mistake that we make as Christian parents is we try to teach this theology that's up here, and they have no idea how to apply it to everyday life. You have to be able to do that because they're living in the real world. We're living in a sinful, broken world where everybody doesn't agree with us. And they're not going to make the same decisions that we are, or our kids are. You have to teach that. That's really our goal in a lot of different areas here. But that's a huge win on your part. If you can simplify it enough to teach biblical truth to everyday life. It's a chapel example. We tell them this is what Scripture says about this. Don't talk behind somebody's back. Well, we've got to apply that now, right? That means when a group of you are together, you don't talk about somebody behind their back. Very simple truths apply to everyday life. Don't get so caught up in the clouds that you miss the everyday teachable moments. That's really what parenting is all about. It's the art of capturing teachable moments. Right? And part of us as dads is we've made it, we've lost the art of intentional conversation. Right? I always say this. Most of you remember the story of Abraham and Isaac in the Bible, right? I always say, imagine the dinner table conversation after the story of Abraham and Isaac. Hey, Dad, remember that time you tied me up on the altar and you had a knife over my chest? Yeah, son, I was there. I remember that. You remember that? Man, I was scared. Yeah. But you remember God provided a way? He provided a substitute, right? Yeah, and I didn't have to die. He took my place as substitute, and they were just like, I can just see their dinner table conversation being fired up about who God is and what He's done, right? We don't have those types of conversations anymore. When's the last time you reminded your kids of how God has provided for your life? I'm so guilty of that. When's the last time that you've reminded your kids of who God is and what He's doing in your life? Not Coach Brady's life, not Mr. Hancock's life. What He's doing in your life. At the end of the day, they want to hear from you. They don't want to hear from me. I can be entertaining. I can be funny some of the time. We've got great people on staff, great coaches. We've got a great staff at Memphis. At the end of the day, they don't want to hear from them. They want to hear from you. They want you to tell them that you believe in them and that they've got what it takes. And they want to hear from you that the God of the universe loved them so much that he sent his son to die for our place. They want to hear it from you. They're going to hear it from us. Trust me. There's not going to be a day that goes by that they don't hear it from me. But deep down at their core, they want to hear it from you. Engage them in conversation early and often and about anything. Here's a little litmus test for you. I heard this not too long ago, and it really is true because I catch myself doing it. The first question you ask your son or daughter when they get home is telling them that's what's most important to you. You know what I ask most of the time? How much homework do you have? Right? That's that's a selfish question. Right? That's a selfish question that says, how much of my time are you going to be taking up with me helping you or guiding you through your homework? How selfish is that? Right? Worst part of a car ride after a game is riding home with Dad. Because you're going to get that question. Right? My oldest son, he's a long snapper. He snaps for punts and field goals. You know the question he gets from me most of the time when he gets home? Have you snapped today? Right? So what does that tell him is most important to me? His exterior, his actions, his approval. He now has been taught to seek approval through whether he snaps the football well or not. That's how jacked up I am. Instead of trying to get where his heart is. Don't make the same mistakes that I make. Engage them early and often and about anything. Last thing on that. What does it tell your son or daughter that if you are picking them up and they get in the car and you are on this? What message is that sending? I'm telling you the message it's sending because I hear from these guys here. It's whoever's on this line is more important than me at that time. Trust me, you want your kid to shut down and not engage them in conversation? Talk on your phone while they get in the car. And I know many of you are successful and have business calls all the time, but I can promise you 5 minutes of intentional time right in the car could be the most important conversation you have in the day. Because they have just been without you for 6, 7, 8, 9 hours. And they need to have those conversations. If you're going to be strategic and intentional with your boys and your girls, you must have those conversations. So that's what we've got to do. Next. We've got to be, as dads, we've got to be champions of service. And this starts at home. My famous quote for this is, everybody wants to save the world, but nobody wants to help mom do the dishes. And that's reality. Their version of service, of taking initiative for the benefit of others, is going to be them watching you and how you serve your spouse. You are raising a future husband. In my DNA, in my core, if left to my own devices, Grizzlies on Fox Sports South is my way of serving. Because I'm an idiot. After 20 years, I'm fairly better at it. Not great. But if I'm about to raise 2 boys where their normal is dad's on the couch watching the Grizzlies while mom's doing laundry or helping clean up the kitchen or cooking or cleaning or whatever. So what are we raising? We're raising a generation of boys who think their spouses are their maid or their cook. We can't have that. They have to see you serve. And you will continually have to remind them that they are to serve. For 3 days, there were 2 towels sitting on our couch. For 3 days, Carrie reminded our oldest that those 2 towels were supposed to be taken upstairs to his bathroom. We finally won after 3 days. I feel sorry for his roommates next year in college. I really do. But the reality is, we not only have to model it, but it has to be reminded every single day. You have to remind them that this is not just something you do just because we want you to do it. It's because out of respect and out of taking initiative for the benefit of your mother, who has worked tirelessly to perfectly fold those towels, they're not meant to be right there. So as an act of service to her, take those upstairs. And then it starts to click. The Gatorade bottles get thrown away, finally. His car gets cleaned up, finally. Those kinds of things. But if you don't do that early and often, then you're raising a selfish, self-centered individual. And that's the last thing you want. The last thing I want for Preston's future spouse is that. And so we have to adjust accordingly. Right? We look out, it's one of those, we live in a look out for number 1, but don't step in number 2 generation. It's really what we are. We're looking out for ourselves, and we definitely don't want to get our hands dirty. It starts at home. It starts at home. It also starts by you serving alongside your kids somewhere in this city. Think of the generational impact that we could have if dads and sons started serving all over our city. Think of the generational impact it could have if a son moved back to Memphis after college because he loved that ministry or Micah or St. Jude or Le Bonheur so much that he'd been serving there all of his life that he just wants to come back to do that. Maybe even work there. But if you don't model it, it won't get done. If you don't model it, it won't get done. You have to be a champion of service, starting at home and working your way out. All right, next. And if we're starring anything, this is probably the most important. We as dads have got to commit to discipleship. 2 big areas. I told you I made 2 lists, right? 2 lists that you need to make. 1 is what you want them to know spiritually. And 1 is getting them ready to kick them out at 18 and get them ready for college. I could spend the next day and a half talking about how inept Memphis football players are at living life. And that's not just Memphis football players. That's welcome to a college campus. Right? Whites and reds don't go in the laundry together. Like we've got football players that wear pink shirts. Like it's just reality. They've never been taught those kinds of things. You need to have a specific set of life skills for your son, and you should teach them early and often. When a boy leaves PDS, there are certain life skills that he knows how to do. There's no reason your son in 6th grade should not be able to wash, dry, and fold his own laundry. There's no reason. If my oldest can do it, yours can do it. But it takes work. There's no reason they shouldn't be able to iron their own clothes. You're trying to produce a future adult, right? Isn't that the goal? Right? The cleaners is not always open. If Preston Brady has wrinkled pants, he makes a decision to go out with his girlfriend with wrinkled pants, or he irons them. Now, if it's an event where we need him to look somewhat presentable without fear of embarrassment, then we'll get it taken care of. But if it's a girlfriend or out to a party or something, if you wear wrinkled pants, sorry, buddy. That's on you. And guess what he does? He gets home And he figures out. And it might be last minute. It might be 6:45 a.m., him ironing pants. But we literally taught that to him when he was here at PDS. They need to be able to manage money. And most of you in the room are far smarter about managing money than I am. I know you're experts in it because I know you very well. That's one thing we have not done well. $20 here, $20 there. You know what I'm talking about, right? We have not done a very good job of managing that. That's a skill that he has to have. All of those skills need to be taught so that when you launch him off at 18, he is fully capable of living as an adult. And more importantly, the list of what you want him to know spiritually, so that when he's sent off into a college classroom, he understands this is the decision that I'm going to make. This is why I'm making that decision. This is how it fleshes out on a daily basis. It's huge. It's absolutely huge. But it requires you having a plan. Because what will happen is what has happened to me. You get down to the last 2.5 months, and there's a bunch of things that I forgot. That either weren't on the list or came up late, and I said, I need to do that. But then you get busy. You need to have this time. Maybe it's a group of your dads coming together and teaching it together. But there's nothing better, and I've seen the result of the good too. I can spot them a mile away. There are guys, man, on our football team that I would want Emma to, Carrie might flinch at this, but I would want Emma to marry. I mean, there are some guys on there that I'm like, man, this guy's got it together. When I start grilling him with questions, guess what continues to come up? Either a dad, or if he didn't have dad at home, a mentor had taught him all this stuff. And you never have to worry about him. It takes work and intentionality, and that's on us to do that. You've got to have a list. You've got to have a plan. Here's a picture for you. There's a 6th grade picture of skinny Preston ironing his own clothes for the first time. So it can be done. Trust me, I wanted you to have visual proof of that. It can be done. Pretty good job, too. He probably does a better job. He did a better job then than he does now, but because he's in a hurry. But it can be done. The other thing that I think is important before we get to this last one, let me say this. Your boys need to see you mentoring or discipling somebody other than them as well. It's definitely a scriptural call for us to make disciples. So, guys that you're mentoring, guys that you're influencing, get your kids around them as well so that they can see what that looks like. Because eventually they're going to have to do that. You're raising them to do that. And if they don't see it from you, where are they going to see it? Trust me, you want to have these conversations under your roof. You want to talk about important things under your roof. Don't trust it to anybody else, right? Just think about the culture, right? Think about it. What do you see on TV? There's going to be 2 playoff games this weekend, NFL playoff games. If you are watching that with your son and a commercial comes on, what is their view of manhood going to be? Viagra, Cialis, some kind of alcohol. There will be a scantily clad woman involved in some way, shape, or form. If we don't stop and say that that's wrong, your boys, my boys and girl are going to assume that's normal. That's a scary thought now. If you don't stop and say that's not a proper view or that's not what manhood is about, they're going to assume that's normal. You have to take the time. It's Axe body spray. We've got, some of you guys have got 6th grade boys. There's like a fog of Axe body spray in the 6th grade hallway. And like, let's just be real, they're 30 and 45-year-old women up there. Like they're not high school girls jumping out of their lockers to come like be with them. But they think that Axe body spray will like magically, that women are just going to flock to them. It's insane. But that's what the culture's taught. Oh, trust me, there's Axe body spray in our house too. But that's just kind of a very small symptom of what the culture is trying to do. If you look at a Viagra or Cialis commercial, what do you see? I can have sex at the drop of a hat. And more than likely, that girl is smoking hot as well. Well, last time I checked, that's not reality. But if we don't stop and say something about it, then they're going to assume that that's normal. They're also going to assume, if you don't apply biblical truth to everyday life, that that's normal as well. I mean, I've still got a buddy of mine who's a pastor in Little Rock, and his dad still, to this day, all of their kids are well over 30. I think they're in their mid-40s. And their dad, to this day, will still stop at a commercial with the adults in the room and say, just so I'm clear, everybody knows that's wrong. And they all laugh at him, but he still does it. Because that's just the way he's been trained to teach his sons and daughters, to make sure that the culture doesn't have the predominant influence in his sons and daughters' life. Let's get to the last one. Then I'll get you out of here. Got 6 minutes. You have to be the most fun person at your house. Period. End of sentence. Don't ever, 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 ever let your kids equate glorifying God and being boring. Don't ever let it happen. Don't ever let your sons or daughters think that following Jesus has to be boring. You be the most fun person in the room. That's what they will remember. Make a fool of yourself on purpose. That's what they will remember. Tape the spray nozzle with duct tape at your house and ask your son to go get you some water so that he gets sprayed. Or let your wife do it and let the kids ask you and you get sprayed and let them laugh. Scare your children. Jump out of a closet. Scare them. Make it fun. In some way, shape, or form, I've created a British character that calls our house to go and tickle our 9-year-old daughter before she goes to bed. Like, she literally walks in the house and says, has there been a call from England today? Like, literally, I'm not kidding. But I'm willing to look foolish to raise a generation of sons and daughters that equate following Jesus and being fun. I'm willing to do that. It has to happen. You have to be the chief memory maker in your house. 3 categories. Simple, just what I said. Do fun things. Second, and this one's hard because we're all busy, but be spontaneous. I told this story, it's happened a long, long time ago, but rarely do we get snow. We just had some, but rarely do we get snow. And knowing who I know in the PDS world, I knew the night before that we were going to be out of school, which was kind of nice. So I decided that I was going to take my boys, who were then very, very young at that point. We're going to go over to East High School because they have somewhat of a hill, and we're going to sled. We're going to sled at midnight, dead middle of the night. So I told Carrie, I said, hey, listen, I'm going to wake the boys up, get over it, and we're going to go. And so she was all about it because she knows kind of the way I operate with these kinds of things. And so I said, okay, this is a good idea. I'll start calling people and see if they want to go. So I call my buddy down the street. He's like, no. And I'm like, loser. I hang up. I go to the next one. I could not find anybody other than my brother-in-law, who did not have kids at the time, to go with us. We're at East High School in the middle of the night, and we're the only ones there. We had more fun that night, and fun conversation and snowball fight, all of those things. We had more fun that night. Now, what did I set myself up for? Anytime it snowed, you better be ready to get up at midnight, right? But we had more fun. They will remember that to this day. To this day. I mean, Preston was probably 10 then it was 6. They still remember it. They still remember it. You've got to be spontaneous. You got to do fun things. One thing that we do at PDS that I learned from a guy at Christ Methodist a long time ago, this is something that you could do, and you might have done it before. When 6th graders graduate from PDS, when they finish reading our book that we teach on manhood, we have an Oscar. I think, Oscar, you might have even done this. Blake, I know you've done this before too. We have what we call a rib day, and we all wear white T-shirts, and there are no napkins in the room. And we just have a really good time lathering barbecue all over ourselves. But here's what happens. You know what the 5th graders look forward to more than anything? This day in 6th grade. And we look totally foolish. But it's just something that we can mark a moment, mark a memory, like this is this next passage into middle school. Let's celebrate it. Let's look foolish. And we just have a good old time. Most of the time we're pretty much covered in it. There might be somebody in here with a son in that picture. It's a little old picture, but that's one of those things. And then the last category is obviously we've got simple, we've got spontaneous, and we've got spectacular. We made a decision that I think has been a really, really good decision for us, is at 10 years old we decided that we would not do birthday parties anymore. That at 10 years old, that was a moment for us where we would take a birthday trip. So the money that we would blow on a birthday party, which all you know, or maybe your wife hadn't told you, but you probably know what they've spent on birthday parties. We decided that I would take the 2 boys on an intentional trip. And then Emma's already tried to negotiate down to 9. She lost. So she's got one more year before she and Carrie go on a trip together. But I intentionally saved up and intentionally let them pick what they wanted. And we just had 2 intentional times together. Well, for 11 years old, with Preston, we decided to go together as a family. And we decided that an amusement park was the best thing to do. So we went to Kings Island in Cincinnati. I highly encourage amusement parks for you and your kids because you have to wait in line. And it's a perfect time to have conversation because they can't get away from you. It's a beautiful thing. So we're at Kings Island. It's like 60 degrees outside. It's a beautiful day to ride roller coasters. What's the one thing that you don't want to ride when it's 60 degrees outside, right? The water ride. And so we get to the end of the day, and the boys are just bugging me to death to ride the water ride. I'm like, God, this is miserable. I don't want to do this. It's awful. And so I start thinking, all right, well, it's cold, so this will be good. This is a good chance. So I look at the line of the water ride. There's nobody in line. Like there's like 10 people on the entire ride. So I told Carrie, I was like, get your camera ready. Just be ready. I don't know what's going to happen, but be ready. And so we get on. I was like, we're waiting. We're going on the front row. We're on the front row. And I was like, I asked the lady, I said, do you care if we just stay on? Like, do you care? She's like, no, nobody's on the ride. And I'm like, perfect. Then I thought, okay, we'll just take this up a notch. You care if we take our shirts off? Care if we take our shirts off? She's like, I don't know. So there we are. I know, just don't be intimidated by my physique. I want you to look at the reaction of my boys. Steer clear of the white pasty individual next to him. Look at my boys. Both smiling. Bennett, who by nature is an introvert, is fist pumping. They will never, ever forget that. One willingness to look like an idiot gives me 10 or 15 years worth of communication capital because they'll never forget it. And here's what I want. I want them to do the exact same thing. Hopefully, I'll be alive so that I can do it as a grandfather because then they have to take their kids home. Like I can really embarrass them then, which would be a beautiful thing. Simple, spontaneous, spectacular. You be the most fun person in the room. Cast vision, give them a clear definition of what it means to be a man or a woman and how that fleshes out. Communicate truth. Teach them, master the art of intentional conversation and asking questions. Teach them how to apply biblical truth to everyday life. Be a champion of service. Take initiative for the benefit of everybody in your house. Serve and lead by example. Commit to discipleship, both spiritually and from a life skill perspective. And finally, be the chief memory maker. I promise you that if you work within those 5 principles and you work at it and you go together and you start journeying together, I promise you there'll be a difference. I promise you. I promise you there'll be a difference. That's where my heart is. That's where I want to help you go. It's where I want to motivate you to be the best dad that you can possibly be. Because that's what God calls us to do. That's what God calls us to do. I hope that this room will be twice the size next time. We're shooting to be the last Friday of the month. The next one will be February 24th. We'll start promoting a little bit earlier than we did this time, but we're really, really excited about that. Then we'll have one in March. I think it's the 31st, and then April's a little bit different because of Easter, but we'll be at the back end of April as well. 3 different speakers. Really excited about all 3 of them. Far better than me, but also in 3 different areas that we really want to discuss and talk through with you. So I'm excited about it. I'm glad you're here. It's 12:59. Let me pray, and we're out of here. God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for these men. It warms my heart. It excites me more than anything to have a group of men who want to be strategic and intentional with their children in the same room together, wanting to journey together for your glory and not their own. So God, I pray that we leave out of here changed individuals, that we will be motivated to take the time to really work at this and be intentional with our kids and spend time in conversation with them, making memories with them, serving with them, discipling them. God, it's a task that we can't do without your power, without your Spirit working through us, so we ask for that today. I'm thankful for every man in this room, and I pray that you bring us back together along with some of our friends in February. We love you. We praise you. We ask all these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Have a great afternoon. Thanks for being here, guys.